Hello, everybody. My name is Guru Dan Lohman, and I thought I'd create a couple of different video series to kind of help people with their R-knees. People are always asking me to put something together, so I figured I'd go ahead and just do it. So I've been lucky enough and blessed enough to train with some really great grandmasters and some great teachers, and all we are really is vessels. We just kind of regurgitate what we learned over the years. I get lucky enough to go back and forth to the Philippines about 2 or 3 times a year, and get to train with these guys, so it's been a great blessing. But I thought with this video series, what I'd do is I'd start kind of encompassing all of our needs, right? So from the long range to the medium range to the short range, and kind of explain those ranges a little bit better. Obviously, there's going to be multiple videos that I do for this. The first video, because if your foundation sucks, basically everything sucks. So you have to have a good foundation. So I figured I'd start the first video series with a talk about footwork patterns in general. And then the next video series will actually talk about how to apply those footwork patterns in the different ranges of long, medium, short. So some of it will be sword-based, some of it will be stick-based as we talk throughout this video series. But anyway, let's delve right into this. So with footwork, it's interesting. I hear a lot of people, oh, we have footwork in our knees. Of course you do, right? So everybody has different patterns that they may or may not use, whether it's whichever style it is in our knees. That's interesting, though, is that when I see footwork a lot of times performed, unfortunately, I see it just forward and back, right? I don't see the different patterns being used. And it's like anything. This isn't criticism, it's just a generalization, right? But it's like anything. If you want to be good at something, whether it's football, boxing, whatever it is, right? What separates the really good ones from the average person is the footwork. So footwork is the key to everything, really, right? So that's why I wanted to start with that foundation instead of correct foundation for that. So some of these patterns you'll be familiar with, the R-knees, but maybe I'll say something you didn't think about before. And definitely when I start applying them in the next video series, you'll see that. So what I have here on the floor here, I have different footwork patterns that I use in our system. The main system I do is Kombuthan, but I'll be applying mostly from Kombuthan, but there'll be some other R-knees. Kombuthan's a great art because it encompasses a lot of the classical and the modern aspects of it. It was created by great grandmaster Ernesto Paresis, and that's the lineage I come from. And then my teacher is Grandmaster Shelly Mospa. And so he's my teacher. And so what I'm going to share with you is kind of looking through a glass of all R-knees, though, not just specific to Kombuthan. So what I have drawn out here is just a box with an X inside it. So that's going to give us our template to where we can do multiple different types of footwork. So you'll hear in FMA a lot of times you'll hear people call it things like the female triangle, which is like a V, right, and a male triangle, which is a reverse V, right, like a pyramid. So a good way to explain that is that with the female triangle, I'm trying to kind of go away from the force, right? I'm trying to get away from it. With a male triangle, I'm coming into the force. So that's a good way to kind of just kind of differentiate the different types of footwork with the patterns of the triangles. Anyway, let's talk about the female triangle first, because that's the most common in all FMA. Because again, we're dealing with weapons a lot of times, so we're with sword and what have you, so we're going away from the force. You'll find that in most sword systems. That's kind of the default. You'll find long range is the default. They don't like to come in medium. And again, these are generalizations. They don't like to come into the close range. Typically when that happens, they have an answer for that range, but typically they'd rather play outside and cut your hand off or whatever. But with a female triangle, if you start at the bottom of the triangle, so I'm in the middle of the X here basically. And if you start off with a female triangle, if you're playing with the bottom of the triangle, you come back to center. And this way I'm just playing with the bottom of the triangle. Here. It's very, very basic. The length of it, the length of your triangle, the length of your stride and everything is going to depend on you. But I really encourage you to start going with bigger stances when you first start doing this. You can always make your stances shorter, right? But I find that, or I've definitely found that as I play with different systems and I learn some of these older Largo systems from the Philippines, that the deeper stance is the key to unlocking a lot of different things like range and the arc of the sword, all kinds of things. So don't sleep on that part. Use your walking kind of middle stance, but definitely get used to a little bit deeper stance as well. So again, this is playing with the bottom of the triangle. It's real simple, right? Playing with the bottom of the triangle. And then we can play with the top of the triangle. If I'm playing with the top of the triangle, I'll go to the corner of the box, basically, right? And again, I can make this box bigger or smaller. This is just a template, right? If I'm playing with the top of the box, I'm going here. So top of the triangle, rather, I'm going here. So it allows me to move here. So that's the top of the triangle. Same idea. If I start with the bottom of the box, and I'm looking at this male triangle now, is that I'm going to the center of the triangle, okay? And I come back down. I'm going to the center of the triangle, and I come back down. Center of the triangle, and I come back down. Again, this can move left, right, point different directions and everything. That's the basics of it. But again, don't sleep on going a little bit deeper with that, right? Don't sleep with going deeper into your triangle. Also, because we play with the bottom of the triangle first, where we're on the bottom part of the triangle, we can also play with the top of the triangle, where we're dropping back to here, top of the triangle, right? And again, don't sleep on getting your stances a little bit deeper and a little bit further away. At the same token, once we have this box and we understand this, now we can start using what's called a box step. Again, some systems may have a different name for this, but I can go to one corner of the box and go to the other corner of the box. And this gives me an opportunity a lot of times if someone's in front of me to cut an angle on them. Again, I can play with the top of the box and go here. Top of the box and go here. Does that make sense? So there's all kinds of different ways I can go about doing it. I can go just straight to the top of the box and cut that angle, from the bottom, for instance, right? I can do all this and still cut those angles. So that's the basics of it, right? Then you need to understand about your stepping, right? So relieving pressure is the most important thing, but you cannot go just straight backwards. That's going to work for maybe one or two moves, but once somebody's putting a whole lot of pressure on you, you cannot go back further than they can go forward. So let's talk about the stepping here in general. So when we think about stepping, again, just ignore this box for right now. If we're thinking about stepping, we have a shuffle. It's surprising how many people, when you first start learning the footwork of just a shuffle, they get all confused, they get happy feet or whatever, right? Whichever direction you're going first, you're going to move that foot first. So if I'm going backwards, my left foot's back, I'm going to go back first. Okay, if I'm going forward, I'm going to take that first front foot and move it forward. I can take full steps as well because sometimes the pressure's too much, right? The shuffle isn't happening. I'm trying to shuffle, it doesn't work, then I have to take a full step. Does that make sense? So I can take a full step forward, I can shuffle forward, I can take a shuffle back, and I can do a full step back. Again, this is basic footwork. But then when you start applying different things where, for instance, where you're shuffling back and all of a sudden you have to cut an angle, then that's where you start using your triangles or your box step or whatever it is, right? And again, the next series, I'll talk a little bit more about that. Sometimes you're shuffling back and then you have to get off the center again, you're cutting an angle. So all this stuff is going to be important. You also have, in some systems, almost like a T-step, or I don't like to do cross steps personally, but it's almost like a T-step, right? So in that T-step, what will happen is, it gives you a chance to go to a step and a half, right? So if I'm going forward and the person is a little bit further away, I can go another half a step. So from the side, if I'm going like this from the side, I'm stepping forward, and that's as far as I can go until I make another step, and it gives me another half a length, right? So if someone's trying to escape from me, for instance, I can do that shuffle, and then I can give them another half a step and get closer. So a lot of times I'll use that in sparring because it looks like I'll just bring that rear foot back up, right? So rear foot up, because what it does, it changes the range. So they think I'm out of range, and I can bring that front foot forward and get the range. So in Largo systems in general, you have one other triangle that's used that's called a classical triangle in our system. I don't know what other systems call it, but you'll see this used a lot of times in sword systems in particular. In Negros, it's heavily used, right? So I find that, general statements again, Cebu and Negros, they have the most Espada y Daga systems or sword systems that I find. For whatever reason, those systems kind of like did both the sword and the daggers, probably because of the Spanish influence on those islands. In general, you have other islands that do other things and different things with the sword. But anyway, from Negros, what they'll do is they'll do what's called a classical triangle, and it's really interesting. What they'll do basically, if you use this point here, is I'll go to the base of one triangle, and then I'll come to the point or the middle of that triangle. So that would be my classical triangle. What it does, it allows me to get off the arc without coming forward. And again, I'll talk about this in the next series, but if I go forward every single time, I get into the arc of the weapon. And that can be dangerous for me. So a way for me to let it go past me and then come back in center is going to be my classical triangle. Again, typically you'll see it done bigger with a motion like this, okay? Or it can also be small. I use it a lot of times in knife drills and what have you. You also see all this footwork patterns, for instance, you'll see in Salat a lot of times too, with your different Indonesian Salats and obviously from your Filipino Salat. But anyway, those are some of the things you can look at when you think about just the basic footwork patterns. In the next video series I do, you're going to see how we apply the different patterns and what they're really going to do, and that's really going to open up your world. But again, don't sleep on the footwork part, because if you sleep on this part and you think, we do this every time before class starts. We do these footwork patterns. Don't just, oh yeah, I got this triangle and forget about it. You have to be able to learn to move quickly and fast and maintain range, and this is what's going to do it for you. You have to maintain range and not get hit. Be just outside. Everybody talks about the sword being a game of inches. That's very true. You got to have your footwork to do that. Also, if you want to engage in somebody, if you want to break their center, basically, you have to have good footwork. Anyway, I hope that helps. And again, I'll talk to you guys next video series. Thank you.